On today's podcast, I am joined by someone I've had the privilege of learning from over the past few weeks, the brilliant Elliot Kay. And if you've been following along, you'll know that I've been doing a speaking training program with Trey Lowe recently. And Elliot's one of the trainers on that course. And let me tell you, he brings a presence. The kind of presence that makes you lean into what he's saying, to laugh, to reflect, and to realise that you've just learned something that might change the way that you show up in the world. Elliot is a keynote speaker, an author of 6 books and on his 7th, and the founder of the Speaker Awards here in the UK. But what I love most about him is how real he is. Elliot talks openly about where he's come from, the challenges that have shaped him, and he uses storytelling and messaging to help people step into their voice with confidence and with courage. He just has this gift for helping you to stop hiding, to stop performing, and actually be yourself on stage. So today we're diving into all of that in our conversation, how to own your own story, to speak with impact, and navigate some identity shifts. And yes, I am also super excited at the fact that Elliot used to be a professional dancer, which I had to explore. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to like, share, or send this episode to someone else who needs to hear it. It makes a huge difference and helps more people find the podcast. Enjoy. Hi, Elliot. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to have you on this podcast. And kind of just want to talk to you a little bit about, the spirit of Hit Your Target. The reason I did this podcast is about how you've hit some personal targets in the past. And, you've had so many successes. I want to talk to you a bit about being a former professional dancer, because I heard
Okay.
that on one of your other podcasts. But, just tell me a little bit about, because you now do the Speaker Summit, you're running Pro Speakers in the UK, which is kind of the leading UK platform, and you've written 6 books, on with your 7th at the moment, is that right?
Yeah, working on the 7th. That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about kind of how did you go from, I really dying to know, how did you go from a professional dancer to what you're doing now?
Well, it wasn't a straightforward road. It's kind of fraught with a bit of confusion, lostness, if that's a word. Refinding myself. I think once I stopped dancing, I ended up a bit lost and just kind of working and a bit numb in myself. And then eventually, gradually, it took a few years to find myself again. And so, from dancing to kind of where I am today, or even finding purpose, there's a few years in between. I'd like to tell you that I went to sleep after I got injured. I woke up and everything was fine. And I just like, yeah, look at me. No, it wasn't quite the case. I did go quite numb, because, when you fought for something, I started dancing when I was really old, when I was 21, so it's something I really fought for. I worked every night to fund myself. I didn't have the money, right? So until I got a scholarship. So when I lost the dance, you kind of lose a part of yourself, a part of your dream. And so it took obviously a few years to refine that. And so from there, I ended up a corporate trainer for a while, so that kind of supplemented the whole not quite dancing, but still doing stuff in front of people. And then from that, I kind of found coaching. And then from coaching, I launched several businesses and then kind of found my way into the speaking world. 17 years later, I run the Speaker Awards and the Speaker Summit in the UK, and, which is becoming the premium platform for professional speaking around the UK. So the transition, I wish I had a simpler answer for you than that.
Yeah. No, I think it's amazing because obviously what's led me to you and how we've connected is through me wanting to do speaking.
Yes.
So, you've been, I've learned so much from you already in such a short space of time on that. But my dream, if I could go back, would be to dance.
Ah,
I think I actually find some synergy in that because there's an element of performance and kind of and taking on somebody else. Do you find that like
I think that, look, I think to be a professional speaker, to to do what you're talking about. There is an element of performing, right? There's an element of entertaining, there's an element of inspirational, there's an element of empowerment and education. I think in the professional speaking world, authenticity and being who you are is really important. I think there's a lot of speakers out there that try and be different version of themselves when they speak, or they think they have to be a certain way when they speak. An audience have changed, the audience have changed. What people want has changed. Imperfection is a currency. Attention is a currency. So I think when you say taking on someone else, I think you have to be careful as a speaker not to do that. I think, when you dance, you're using your body to express yourself. It depends on what kind of dance you're doing, but in essence, dance is an expression of body. And I think, again, being true to who you are, even as a professional dancer, is quite important. Your abilities, your body, your shape. It's about being more of that. And I think, again, a lot of people might end up trying to be something else. And I
Mm.
think it's quite important to be truly you.
I think that's so true. And I think, I started my journey. I was really shy when I was young, and I can remember my mum took me to a dance school, and I just didn't want to participate. It was far too scary to get on there and do it in front of everybody else. And I was kind of similar. I got into Latin and ballroom when I was about 16,
Mm.
and then loved it because it was an expression of me, exactly, as you're saying there. Wasn't necessarily a performance. I just loved to dance. I loved to feel the
Yeah.
music and feel a part of it. Um, I think what I'm learning through, the speaking course as well, and you can obviously embellish on this, is to bring that authenticity. So it's about connecting with the stories that mean something to you and having a purpose behind it.
Yeah. I think, a lot of people, when they get going with the speaking, I think a lot of people do it because they might think it's easy, right? Or, how hard can it be to stand up and speak? And I remember when I transitioned from dancing to speaking, I remember thinking, how hard can it be? I mean, I'm used to using my body to express myself. I'd done, big, big rooms, 1,000 plus when I was a professional speaker. I think the biggest I did was 5,000. So, I kind of had this naivety about me. And then when I picked up speaking, I realized just how much to be great, to be world class has to go into it. You can be a poor or rubbish speaker and you don't do anything, but to truly be world class, to truly move an audience, to truly lead an audience, to empower an audience, to educate an audience, to entertain an audience, that takes time, skill, effort, energy, desire, strength. It takes bombing a lot and kind of picking yourself up. It's the talks that don't work that often you learn the most from, right? And I think that a lot of people with something important to say, with a mission like yourself, that really kind of at the heart of what you do are people. I think it's important to understand that, like anything else, it needs time, space, energy, investment. It needs to be practice. It needs to be learned. It needs to, and like, there's no utopic ending, right? There's no like we arrive and like, oh, I'm here, look at me, everything just flows, and everyone just laughs at my jokes, and everyone cries when I want them to cry. You kind of this is a continuous journey, and I think people need to realize that, and there's no right or wrong. I mean, it's not. I don't believe anyone has the right to tell you that you can't speak. But people can tell you when you're doing a good job, right? And I think a lot of people, a bit like myself, enter it quite naively and then quickly get slapped in the face, and a lot of people bail out. So I think it's important to understand, like anything else, it needs the time, space, the energy, the investment to become really like you've done, right? You carve out, 2 calls a week, you come to live training every month, and if not more behind the scenes, right? So I think that's really important for people to understand that.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that, because I think that's one of the biggest probably myths or misconceptions, is because you see people on stage and they make it look effortless. And
Right.
what people don't realize is probably the hours that have gone behind making that look effortless. And I think I see a lot of people who are very confident, and they can go, oh, yeah, I can get up and do that. And they get up and then perhaps tank because do you find that?
Yeah, look, I think confidence doesn't necessarily equal great speaker, right? You can be really confident, but be confidently boring or confidently aggressive or
Mm.
confidently, just not very good. I think a lot of, because I get that, right? I get a lot of people who approach me or might want to enter the awards, or they're like, hey, I'm a really confident speaker already. I'm like, okay, great. Like, ground zero. That's the great place to build from. The other thing I get a lot of is, I've been speaking for 10 years or 20 years, and they use time as the qualifier. Now, sure, it gives them experience, it gives people sort of a stepping stone, but that doesn't mean you're very good, right? Or it doesn't mean, and the next kind of thing is, well, are you getting the bookings you want? Are you getting the fees you want? And then often it's like, no, well, then it doesn't matter that you're confident, and it doesn't matter that you've been around for 10 years if you're not getting booked and you're not getting paid what you want. I'll never forget this woman a couple of years ago. She approached me for some one to ones, and she was like, I am at least a 2.5 grand speaker. That's what I charge. I'm like, how many bookings have you had at 2.5 grand? She's like, none. I'm like, well, then you're not a 2.5 grand speaker. Do you see what I mean? So I think what's really important to understand that confidence is great. Of course, you need confidence, but I think equally that's one part of it, because you also need the confidence to get back up. You need the confidence to keep going. You need the confidence to deal with rejection. You need the confidence to try different out. You need the confidence to go, wait a minute, that's not working. So confidence is multi-layered, multifacets. A lot of people think it's just like, I'm confident, I can stand on stage. Well, I don't need any training. I don't need to do. And some people, the odd few, really don't. Right? It's not like everybody. But, even the fastest runners have coaches, right? Even the best tennis players still have coaches, have trainers, because they want to be better. And I think that's something to remember, that you might be confident, but does that mean you're doing a great job? And if you are, great, hats off, well done. But a lot of people that are even confident still need support and help, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think, you're absolutely right, 'cause you think of all these top athletes and whatever it is, they still have coaching,
Yeah.
um, you know, because it's that relentless pursuit of greatness, and I think, we kind of live in a society now where people, there's all this noise online about value yourself, know your worth, set your bar up here, and I think, yes, that's great because as a coach, we wanna build people up, want them to have the big vision to, to start doing the things, but there's also an element of realism, and knowing your limits and where you need to develop.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting, wasn't it? Because it's a very interesting, almost philosophical conversation to have, right? Because sure, the amount of people that, again, I come across, they're like, I want to charge 5 grand. Okay. 10 grand. I want to be a 50K speaker, 100 grand speaker. Okay. Right. Um, and my desire for every single one of them to reach that. I would love, love, love every single speaker to reach what they want to get paid. But there's other factors at play. And I don't know if realism is part of it, but it's the fact that you need to look at, does your industry pay that fee? So where you're going into, is it, for example, unfortunately, the mental health and well-being space just doesn't pay speakers very well, period. As much as it's needed, as much as it's wanted, as much as it's on everyone's radar, the budgets for wellness programs are often very low, right? Not everywhere, but a lot of places.
That's
So I was
crazy, isn't
talking
it,
to a
though, when you
guy.
think,
Sorry?
just on that, that's crazy because, that's probably that's what the world needs right now, isn't it?
Right, exactly. But do you see, there's the what the world needs and what people are willing to pay for,
Yeah.
right? And I think you have to understand the industry you're going. You have to understand the type of problem you're solving, and you have to understand who's willing to pay for you to come in and speak about that problem. So obviously there's that element. So someone, I mean, today I had a call with someone who's doing a one-to-one. She's like, how much do you think I should charge? I know she wants to get to 5. I'm like, start at 2, because that's a reasonable amount. People they won't be blown away. Like, oh my God, you're so expensive, and she agreed for where she is. That's the right amount to charge, right? I think what happens is, if I look at some of the people I know are charging 5, 7.5, 10, and I see them as speakers and I see what they are and I see where they are, or what they've established, what they've accomplished, right, as people, then it becomes kind of almost a no-brainer, but an easier sell. I think what happens is a lot of people are trying to sell themselves too soon at a price that they can't quite justify in the booker's mind, because it's a booker that's going to go, well, that person's worth it. So if I'm going online and I'm going, right, let me check out Laura. Laura came to me, she said, wants to speak at my event, and she's saying 5K. And I go online and I check LinkedIn, which a lot of bookers will check, and I check whatever other channel you might be, Instagram, and and I check your website, and your website doesn't communicate 5 grand, and your content doesn't communicate 5 grand without you saying you're 5 grand, then the chances, or your show reel, right, which we haven't covered yet in the course we're doing, but your show reel isn't communicating 5 grand, then how do you justify it? Well, I really know my stuff. Great. But nothing people are seeing is justified, you
Mm,
see.
yeah.
Sorry, I'm developing a cough all of a sudden. So,
Oh no, it's contagious. Sorry.
yeah, you gave it to me through the screen. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of people say, but look, go for it and it will come, and you can do that. But I just think it's a harder slog. It can be tougher to go. Well, I'm a 10 grand speaker, and I'm not going to take anything less. Okay, then you might land that 110 grand, but you might have left 3 grands on the table.
Um,
So, but there are people I know that have got to the point now. They're like, I don't take those gigs anymore. I only take this amount. But they've worked their way to that. They've got there. They've got everything behind them to get there.
yeah. Yeah. One sort of burning question in the back of my mind is like how many hours do you put into a talk or a speech? Because, again, it's trying to get to that where it feels natural, but it's also you've done it so many times, it's probably just second nature in your subconscious is
Yeah, I think there's some things to remember. Number one, no talk's the same, no matter how much you practice it. You're not an actor. It's not about learning script. Okay. It's about, really drilling the talk. When I work with people on their delivery side of things, when I do one to ones and people got big keynotes, I would have liked them to have at least practiced it 50 times minimum. And that's not because I'm like a work driver. I'm mean. But because what happens is when you talk about the second nature, a world class speaker can handle it when things go wrong. And unless you've really drilled it like 50 odd times, you haven't worked through the scenarios of things going wrong. If you've done it 3 to 4 times or a handful of times, you've gone, I'm doing a run through, I'm doing a run through, I'm doing a run through. Okay, that works really well. I'm ready. But when you've pushed yourself beyond 50 or 250, you've really worked and things have gone wrong because within that 50, stuff would have come up, stuff wouldn't landed, you would have forgotten bits, the slides would have frozen, right? Everything that potentially, well, there's other things, of course, that can go wrong. You're ready. And world-class speakers, you talk about make it effortless, also make recovery from things going wrong effortless. So let's say, if you said to me you're doing 45-minute talks, then do 45 times 50, and you know how many hours that is, right? I mean, if we
yeah.
just round it off, that's 50 hours at least to practice one talk. So that's what I would recommend, whether it's half an hour or 45 minutes, mastering those who are up there, those who really kind of the world class would have drilled their talk again and again and again and again, and it just can't it goes beyond second nature, right? It goes into flow, into fluency, into the ability to recover with ease, and that's what makes someone world class, right? When the slides go down, they can still do the talk. When something's not quite working, they can work around it, and that's kind of the world class. So, you know, I would say for like your 5 minute that you might be doing in a couple of weeks or a few weeks, here's a couple of weeks, isn't it? You know, I would practice that at least 50 times, right? Because then it really rolls off. And I know people are, oh my God, who's got 50 times of time to do it 50 times? Well, if it matters to you, remember, you find the time, energy, space, and investment for it. You will find that time.
Yeah.
And amongst that, by the way, I also suggest to listening back, right? Listening back to things while you're washing up or going for a walk, just even unconscious learning, just letting it play in the background on loop, watching it back to watch your body. So there's other aspects to doing that, but that's the answer to your question.
Yeah, thank you. And it is really, really useful because, yes, you're right. I do have a little thing that I need to prepare for in a couple of weeks. So, mine is only 5 minutes, but It is what I've noticed is when I tell a story and even just coming up with that framework, I sometimes will go off on a tangent because I remember I actually picture different things in my head. So then I'll start to, and then I'll lose track. So for me, it's been really helpful to actually record it. So I have a recording on my phone, and then I cringe
Yeah.
in the car as I'm listening to it all the time.
Yeah, and well, a little trick around that, just watch it or listen to it as if you're listening to your best friend versus you.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you'll approach it very differently because you won't be mean to your best friend. You wouldn't go, "Ugh, that was awful," to your best friend, would you? You might give your best friend constructive feedback, but you wouldn't be like, "Oh my God, that's just terrible."
Yeah. Yeah, it is so true. And I think, I mean, I talk about this a lot in terms of coaching because, we talk to, we're our own worst critic. It's terrible
Right.
how the way we talk to ourselves. So,
Exactly.
yeah, it's so true.
A
I
great
think,
thing I learned, well, sorry to interrupt,
no,
just on
go.
that note, is I used to say this when I did my things, and I still stand by it. Like, would you talk to your best friends the way you talk to yourself? Would you talk to your best friend like that? You would never speak to your best friend like you talk to yourself. So why do we make it okay to talk to ourselves like it?
Yeah. Yeah. So, so true. So I, I guess like because I talk around hit your targets, it kind of
Yeah.
performance coaching, how do you hit a goal? But what I try and do is align it because is it something that, actually we really want, or is it what somebody else wants of us? And I
Yeah.
think sometimes this is where we can get a little bit off track because unless we narrow down on the focus of what our target is,
Mhm.
how do we know, is it aligned with what our heart wants and our gut feelings and things? So uh, how did you just going back to that moment of speaking and you developing that, was that something that you got a gut feeling for and you thought, "Yeah, I just want to focus everything on this. This is where my efforts are going"?
You're asking when as a speaker myself, when I built the speaking
Mm.
business?
Well, I'll let you choose. Probably 2 different stories.
I think maybe, or are they? I think there's a couple of things. I think when it came to speaking, I just knew that it's how I could make a massive impact. I knew that's where I could reach my clients. I knew that me standing on stage is a great leverage of time, so I don't have to, you and I know. I also do one-to-ones. You have one-to-one calls, and they can take time, but standing on stage just maximizes the impact. I think there's the performer in me was drawn to it as well. Although now I'm very different to that performer in me. So I think that was a big part of it. I think, with purposeful speaking, as in from a purpose, then it becomes part of your responsibility to stand up, to speak, to impact, to do it right. When you come from a purposeful place, I don't mean like getting on stage on purpose, but having a purpose.
Mhm.
And that was definitely a deciding factor for me. At the time I was the coach of the hat. That used to be my brand. And I got known as the coach of the hat. And I used to run all these seminars. So standing on stage very naturally became the place. And, it's the time, around 2010 where there was this massive explosion in the personal development world. And I was part of that. And, I was one of those that stood on stage, did the 2-day free seminars. And, people then signed up for my courses. So it became a very natural place to be. Right. I mean, amongst that, then we launched the speaking training companies. And I think the training company, one of them, for a while, I was the commercial director, and then I moved in full time. And then my business partner at the time eventually fell out because I wanted a purpose business, she wanted a lifestyle business, and it came to blows when a massive investor came along, wanted to invest in us, and she's like, "No, I just want my dog," and he went, "I'm out." That's when it all started to fall apart. On that business. When we look at the Speak Awards, Speaker Summit, Pro Speakers, what's very interesting about that, when you talk about aligning and you talk about goals and hitting the target, everything happened very naturally, unfolded very naturally. So the path of least resistance and the whole attracting your people into that all happened in the last 4 years of building this business. The other businesses were hard. I had to really push. I had to really, try. It was things took long. Sales took long. So I think there's something about when you talk about alignment and hitting your target, there's something about where is a path of least resistance. And I used to kind of get that intellectually, but not really get it. But since building pro speakers, I get it. And, if I look at how I don't say easy in like, oh, look at me, it's so easy, but how I attract the judges, how I've attracted the partners, how I've attracted the team, and how it's grown, grown, grown. And this year we're VAT, and next year we're going to, double that. It's grown very naturally, but that's still, so I've still had goals and I still want to hit the target, but it's happened very naturally. So, which is part of the reason I'm phasing a lot of the other stuff out is because where's the path of least resistance? Well, actually, it's in this company, and this company is giving me everything I want in terms of being a person, in terms of building the business, in terms of making money. It's all happening in front of my eyes. So why would I go after something else? So when you talk about alignment and you ask that question, I think it's got to feel, it's interesting because 5 years ago, I don't know if I would have spoken like this, but it has to feel light. It has to feel that, it's not easy because that's not the right word, but light. There's not resistance. You're not fighting internally. Everything naturally unfolds within the goal. That's what
Mm.
I feel is kind of like the answer to your question. Although it's a bit like it's not woo woo. I promise you, it's
Yeah.
not woo woo,
Oh, it's not woo woo. Like, honestly, so what I talk about, so
right?
much science behind this.
Yes,
But
exactly. There you
I
go. So
get it.
you can drop the
Yeah.
science.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen to my other podcast on that one. But yeah.
There you go. What's the
Yeah.
name of that podcast?
Well, it's still on Hit Your Target, but it's just I talk around multiple brain integration techniques.
There you
So I've
are.
done a whole series on that because it is about we have so much inner wisdom. You look at evolution. There is a lot of data and science that tells us that our gut brain has neurological systems. Our heart's the same. So, but we end up in fight with ourselves because it's like, well, our heart wants this, our head wants this. We hear it in our language. So it's really helpful for you to explain that journey because certainly from my own reflection over probably the last 18 months, I find myself in rooms that I pinch myself at, but it's just
Mm,
because I've kind of let go of
right.
an outcome in a way. I've just got this bigger goal. And then it's like, oh, it's just sort of landed with me.
Yeah, and I'll give you a prime example of that. So yesterday, I spent 3 days in London, and one of them turned out to be quite a big meeting. I can't disclose too much right now, but I was taking the outcome of the meeting with the team to the team, and interestingly enough, they weren't as resistant as I thought they were. But the other aspect was, I said to the team, "Look, we used to bang our heads on doors to try and get these kind of meetings and these kind of partnership offers. So while it's not the exact outcome we were hoping for, it's actually potentially even greater." And I had to remind myself of that. But that's evolved very naturally. These are two big players, right? Like I sat with at a table, and actually I remember standing outside before going into meeting, and I'm well aware that our brand is a lot smaller than theirs. They are big hitters in the space, big, big hitters. And I went to myself a bit like, I'm sure you do with your clients, as like gearing myself up. I was like, remember, you're a big brand, you've earned this place at the table. And then I went in, and I think, but this happened very naturally. I didn't force, I didn't chase, I didn't have to bang on doors, and these are people that are very guarded. These are people that people always want something from them. And so just by being aligned and going the path of resistance, it very naturally evolved. And now we have to make some key decisions around it. But absolutely, I listened to my gut, I listened to my head. And actually, had I listened to my head yesterday, probably would have pulled the plug, go, no. My ego would have kicked in, going, no, that's not the deal we're looking for. But actually, I sat with it and I was like, no, this is something, there's something here. And sometimes we don't allow ourselves to see that. It's not because it doesn't show up how we want, right? I love this example of, this guy every day he asks God for cake. I'm just going to use God. I don't know if people believe in God, but I'm just going to use that. And so Monday, eggs get delivered. On Tuesday, he finds flour. On Wednesday, the sugar. On Thursday, the butter, right? And then on Friday, he goes, God, where I asked you for cake. I asked you for cake. Where's the cake? And God said, every day I've given you ingredient to make the cake, right? And so we don't see the opportunities in front of our eyes. He wasn't seeing the eggs because he was just looking for cake. And I don't know if you believe it or not, and that's another conversation. But to me, that was my moment to go, wait a minute, it's not cake. I'm not seeing cake, but actually I'm seeing the ingredients here, and we could potentially make a really good cake. And I just needed to remain open. So actually listening to my gut and not my head allowed me to do that yesterday.
Yeah. Oh,
So I got a
it's
bit
yeah.
passionate there, didn't I? Gee, ooh.
I know, it's great though, because, that is the bit where, for me, when I see that in a client as well, and they go, "Oh yeah, I've just been resisting this, and this is what I really want." And sometimes we have to look at ourselves and go, when we've got that resistance, what is it we're actually afraid of? Because sometimes
Right.
it is that fear of success.
Yeah.
What is it that's holding us back? So yeah, we could go off on a whole other tangent there, but
Whole other
yeah,
tangent there.
great story. So what's your next big target then? I always ask my guests on here, what's the next big thing for you? Obviously,
I
the
think,
bit
I
that you
mean,
can't
these are very
disclose, don't
kind
worry
of.
about that.
Say again?
Obviously, you've got something secretive going on there, which sounds really
Yeah, and
exciting.
that is part of the target, right? So I think the target is to really sell out or get 300 bums on seats, with all the love in the world. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, right? For the speaker summit
Yeah.
next year, and also to kind of hit the 200 plus target for the speaker awards. Every year we want to go bigger, bolder, better, right? And I think that's the key. Next year's our 5-year anniversary. Considering I was told it probably won't work out, I'm very happy. I'm very proud. I've had other businesses that hit 5 years, but this is the one I particularly feel really proud. So the next kind of target is to really create an experience for people attending the 5-year party, to really make it the best yet. And I go, everyone says that about the next event, right? And that, it's true, because you want the other one to be better. So better all around, better venue, better, speakers, better. Not that her speakers were bad, by the way, but I didn't mean that. Any
Just keep
speakers that might have
improving,
seen it,
yeah.
but just another kind of level I want to take it to. And so that conversation yesterday potentially can open that door. But also just to really get that to a place now, because the other aspect we need to do with this business is get it to sustain all of us, and that's the next target as well. So financial sustainability, I mean.
Yeah, amazing. And are the tickets for that on sale soon or
No.
no?
Soon, yes, actually, they'll open on the 27th of November. Sorry, I thought you meant to say now. So we're doing like a mini online summit where we're bringing in a AI expert, we're bringing in website experts, we're bringing in a former bureau booker to talk about what does 2026 look like as a professional speaker. So that's going on online, completely complimentary on the 27th of November. And then tickets will open, I think, for 5 days. So we'll have a Black Friday offer. And then it will close again till the next year. We only open in pockets. And I think the next time it opens is February after that.
Fabulous. Okay, that's great. Well, happy to put some of that in the show notes and,
Thank you.
yeah, that sounds very exciting.
I'm
So, I mean,
excited.
I feel like you've just given so much value in this to me, let alone anybody else listening. So if there was someone out there now that's just thinking, I want to get into speaking or I've got this target, but I really don't know how to start, what would you say?
I think, I think well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think what's the purpose behind speaking? Figure out your purpose for wanting to speak. Okay, beyond making money, beyond the big stages, right? Because after a while, you realize that speaking is another hotel room, and it's another train, or it's another plane, and it does. So there's got to be something bigger. So figure out the purpose. I feel once you figure out the purpose, part of your how will unfold. So then you'll find that person or those people that can guide you, or that opportunity will open up. So I think if you're not sure where to start the purpose. Beyond, I have a great story, right? And that's the other one. I have a great story. Why are you wanting and willing to get on stage in front of people and deal with the rejection that comes with it, and the big and small gigs that might or might not do well? What is the purpose? And I think that's ground zero. And I think anybody watching, not trying where to start, that's the place to start. Beyond that, everything's practical, right? You can find the coach, find the training, learn the talk, like that becomes pragmatic. But this is really like, what's your purpose? And start there. And that's what I'll say.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Elliot. That's just been amazing. Really appreciate your
Thank you.
time.
Lovely to be here.
If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate the show or leave a comment. It really helps us reach more people. And don't forget to share it with anyone else who could use a little motivation today. Have a fantastic day and make sure you hit your targets.